Before the Ford D-Series rolled onto British roads, most working trucks looked and felt like leftovers from the war. Heavy, clunky, hard to see out of, and even harder to fix. British haulage was desperate for something smarter, lighter, and more driver-friendly. And in 1965, Ford delivered. But they didn't just release a new truck, they launched a revolution. The D-Series didn't just change how trucks were built, it changed who wanted to drive them. This wasn't a flashy rig meant for the cover of a brochure. It didn't have a roaring V8 or a chrome grille wide enough to block the sun. What it had was functionality, practicality, precision, and British operators loved it because while the other lorries of the time were still stuck in the past, the D-Series was pointing straight toward the future. Ford started with a clean sheet, a forward control tilt cab that gave drivers better visibility, faster access to the engine, and more comfort than anything else in its weight class. That tilt cab, game changer. Mechanics didn't have to lie in puddles or get on their backs to work on a D. Just pop the cab up and the engine was right there. Simple, smart, efficient. It wasn't just a better way to service a truck, it was a better way to run a business. And let's talk about visibility. The D-Series had one of the best sightlines in the game. Big glass, thin pillars. You could actually see the road, the curbs, the loading dock, everything. For drivers making tight deliveries in crowded towns or rural routes. It was a blessing. No guessing, no leaning halfway out the window to check your corners. You had eyes on everything. Power came from Ford's trusty 4D and 6D diesel engines. Not monsters, but smooth, reliable, and efficient. They weren't built for racing, they were built for hauling, and they did that with ease. Local councils, fire brigades, builders, farmers, everybody ran a D-Series. It was the Swiss Army knife of British lorries. You could spec it short or long, light or heavy, with over 70 factory configurations. And if Ford didn't offer it, someone else would modify it. That's how versatile this platform was. Everywhere you looked in the 70s, there was a D-Series doing something different. Delivering bread at 5 a.m., hauling livestock through country roads, carrying scaffolding through London, and yeah, even putting out fires. These trucks weren't collector's items, they were workhorses, and people put them through absolute hell. Mud, snow, floods, broken roads, didn't matter. The D took it all and kept rolling. And it wasn't just the performance. The cab design was ahead of its time. Sure, it looked boxy, but that simplicity made it easy to build, easy to repair, and surprisingly aerodynamic for the era. Plus, it had actual legroom, comfortable seats, logical dials, a heater that didn't need a prayer to work. It wasn't a luxury lounge, but it was honest. Every inch of that truck felt like it was designed by someone who'd actually driven one. It's hard to explain to a modern audience just how radical this was. We take driver ergonomics for granted now, but in the 60s, this was basically science fiction. Most trucks back then were designed like punishment chambers. The D-Series felt human. It invited drivers in instead of scaring them off. And then came the variants. Tippers, flatbeds, box vans, horse boxes, mobile libraries. The D-Series became the backbone of Britain's small to medium duty haulage. Operators loved how cheap they were to maintain. Parts were everywhere. Engines could be swapped. Bodywork could be patched with scrap metal and rivets. These trucks weren't fragile. They were built to be used. You'd see the same D-Series running for 15, 20, even 25 years. Some were so loved by their owners, they were rebuilt multiple times instead of being retired. New paint, new engine, new cab panels. Same chassis, still running. These trucks earned their keep and then some. And Ford didn't just build one D-Series factory. They built a whole empire around it. Production ramped up in Langley, but also globally. Knockdown kits were sent around the world. Brazil, Australia, South Africa, everywhere there were roads. Ford was sending D-Series kits to build them. This wasn't just a British success. It was a global utility machine. It even found its way into military service and government fleets. Wherever there was a need for durable transport, the D showed up. Of course, it wasn't all perfect. Some later models struggled under tightening emissions rules, and as competitors began launching more refined options, the D's age started to show. But even as newer trucks emerged with smoother rides and better fuel economy, many operators still held on to their old Fords, because nothing else quite earned that level of trust. The D-Series eventually gave way to the cargos in the 1980s. A new look, a new name, and a shift toward more European-influenced designs. But the bones, still very D, the philosophy lived on. You can trace a direct line from the D-Series to the trucks we still see today. They laid the groundwork, they changed the culture, and they did it without a single chrome gimmick or marketing stunt. Even after the D-Series faded off the showroom floor, it never really left. You'd still see them, parked in alleyways, pulling out of quarries, rumbling into backlots with rust on the panels but fire in the belly. That's because this wasn't a truck built to follow trends. It was built to outlast them, and it did. But while the D-Series held its ground in the real world, the industry around it was changing fast. By the late 70s and early 80s, new rules were tightening. Emissions, safety, fuel standards, everything was shifting. Drivers wanted smoother rides, quieter cabs, better fuel efficiency. Operators wanted more payload, less downtime, and tech that could keep up with a more global, competitive market. Ford knew it was time to evolve. The D-Series had done its job, but something new had to take the wheel. Enter the Ford Cargo, sleeker, more modern, and ready to compete across Europe. It launched in 1981 and carried the spirit of the D-Series forward, but with refinements that brought it into a new era. The cab was still driver-friendly, still functional, but now lighter, more aerodynamic, and designed for international use. And the engineers didn't just focus on form, they built it to perform. The Cargo came with updated diesel engines, improved suspension, better cab ergonomics, and a sharper turning radius. It could dance around cities just as easily as it could hammer down the motorway. But if the Cargo was the D-Series clean-cut successor, the soul of the original never really went away, because what made the D so good wasn't just the engine or the shape, it was how it fit into people's lives. This was a truck that made small businesses possible. It put food on tables, built homes, delivered newspapers, carried livestock, and got dirty doing it. It wasn't a status symbol, it was a survival tool. And while Ford was shifting gears, the fans of the D never stopped wrenching. Enthusiasts began restoring them, collectors started hunting them down, vintage truck shows all across the UK started welcoming clean, rebuilt D-Series models like they were royalty. And they are, in a way, because when people see one, they don't just see steel and rubber, they see memories. Their dad behind the wheel, their granddad fixing one in the rain, the milkman at 6 a.m., the fire truck from their childhood school visit. These weren't just trucks, they were part of the neighborhood, and they weren't just loved in the UK. Because of Ford's global reach, the D-Series left a footprint around the world. In Brazil, they became the workhorse of urban logistics. In Australia, they were modified into rugged off-road utility rigs. In South Africa, you could find them as tippers, box trucks, even military platforms. Some countries built local variants off knockdown kits shipped in from England. It was British engineering stretched across continents, and still ticking. And while many of those trucks eventually rusted out, fell apart, or were retired, some are still out there. In small towns, tucked behind barns, left sitting in overgrown lots, waiting. Because that's the thing about the D. You can let it sit for 5, 10, 15 years, change the fluids, charge the battery, give it a kick, and 9 times out of 10, it'll come back to life like it never left. You don't get that kind of resilience from a truck built in a boardroom. You get it from experience, from understanding what real drivers need, from knowing that time and money are tight and nobody's got the patience for a truck that throws tantrums every week. The D-Series earned its spot in history not because it was glamorous, but because it worked when nothing else would. And maybe that's why even now, with all the hybrid drivetrains, electric concepts, and touchscreen dashboards, people still remember the D, because it reminds us that simplicity works, strength matters, and when things go sideways, sometimes all you need is a machine that starts when you ask it to, and shuts up when you don't. There's something oddly comforting about a truck that doesn't ask for attention, that doesn't care what year it is, that just works. And in a world obsessed with what's next, the Ford D-Series still has something to say, something real, something loud, something built with grit and steel and miles in its bones. If you loved this trip through British trucking history, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the machines that built our world. Got a memory with a D-Series, a photo, a wild breakdown tale? Drop it in the comments. We want to hear it. Until next time, keep it in gear, keep it old school, and never underestimate a truck with nothing left to prove.